The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training grounds as Maria Santos adjusted her combat gear for the final time. 3 years of grueling preparation had led to this moment. The Special Operations Assessment would determine whether she became the first woman to join the elite Delta Force unit or whether she would return to regular Army duties with her dreams shattered. Commander Jake Morrison watched from the observation tower, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had overseen hundreds of these assessments, but never for a female candidate. The pressure from his superiors was clear. Make sure she fails, but make it look legitimate. The old guard wasn't ready for women in their most secretive operations. Maria had grown up in East Los Angeles, where gunshots were as common as sirens. Her father, a decorated Marine veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 12 years old. He never treated her differently because she was a girl. On the makeshift range behind their house, he would set up targets and time her reloads until her movements became muscle memory. Speed means nothing if you can't hit your target, he would say, but accuracy means nothing if you're too slow to take the shot. Those lessons shaped Maria's entire approach to combat. While other recruits relied on brute strength, she developed precision and timing. Her smaller frame meant she had to be smarter, faster, and more efficient than everyone else. She studied every manual, memorized every procedure, and practiced until her hands could field strip a rifle blindfolded. The assessment began at dawn with a 12-mile march carrying full gear. Maria maintained her position in the middle of the pack, neither leading nor falling behind. She had learned not to stand out too early. The instructors were looking for reasons to eliminate candidates, and being the only woman already put a target on her back. As they reached the weapons range, Sergeant Phillips began distributing firearms for the combat simulation. Each candidate received their assigned rifle, checked the action, and prepared for the exercise. When Phillips reached Maria, he handed her what appeared to be a standard M4 carbine. She immediately noticed something wrong. The weapon felt different in her hands. Years of training had taught her to recognize the subtle signs of equipment malfunction. The bolt didn't slide smoothly when she performed her safety check. The trigger mechanism felt loose, and there was an unusual grinding sound when she moved the charging handle. "Sergeant, I think there might be an issue with this rifle," Maria said quietly, holding up the weapon. Phillips barely glanced at her. "The rifle is fine, soldier. Get into position." Maria looked toward Commander Morrison, who was watching the interaction through binoculars. She knew this was a test within a test. Complaining about equipment would be seen as making excuses. But using a malfunctioning weapon in a live-fire exercise could be dangerous for everyone on the range. The exercise scenario was straightforward. Candidates had to navigate through an urban combat course, engaging targets while under simulated enemy fire. Points were awarded for accuracy, speed, and tactical decision-making. Failing to hit minimum targets meant immediate disqualification. As Maria moved to the starting line, she made a quick decision. She would work with the broken rifle, but she would have to adapt her entire strategy. Instead of relying on rapid-fire engagements, she would need to make every shot count. The malfunctioning weapon might jam at any moment, so she couldn't afford to waste ammunition. The course began with a sprint across open ground toward the first building. Smoke grenades created limited visibility while speakers blasted recordings of gunfire and explosions. Maria kept her defective rifle at the ready, moving in short bursts between cover points. At the first target station, she raised her weapon and squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. The firing pin wasn't striking the primer. She performed an immediate action drill, cycling the bolt and trying again. Still nothing. Other candidates were already moving to the second station while Maria crouched behind a concrete barrier, working frantically to get her rifle functioning. She could hear the range safety officers discussing whether to remove her from the exercise. That's when her father's training kicked in. He had always said that a weapon was just a tool, and a good soldier could fight with anything. Maria examined the rifle more carefully and realized the firing pin spring was broken. She couldn't fix it, but she could work around it. Using her tactical knife, she carefully adjusted the firing pin mechanism. It was a dangerous modification that could cause the weapon to slam fire, but it might give her a chance to complete the exercise. She loaded a single round and tested her theory. The rifle fired, but the bolt didn't cycle properly. She would have to manually operate the action after every shot, essentially turning her semi-automatic rifle into a bolt-action weapon. It would be slower, but it would work. By the time Maria reached the second target station, she was already 3 minutes behind the other candidates. The targets were moving pop-up figures that appeared for only seconds at a time. She had to choose her shots carefully. Taking a steady position behind cover, Maria waited for the first target to appear. When it popped up 40 meters away, she took a careful aim and fired. The shot hit center mass, but she had to immediately work the bolt to eject the spent casing and chamber a new round. The manual process was taking too long. By the time she was ready for a second shot, the target had already disappeared. She needed a different approach. Moving to a flanking position, Maria anticipated where the next target would appear. She pre-aimed at the spot and waited. When the target popped up, she was ready. Another center hit. Commander Morrison was watching her progress with growing interest. He had expected the broken rifle to end her assessment quickly and quietly. Instead, she was adapting in ways he hadn't anticipated. Her scores were actually improving as she learned to work with the malfunctioning equipment. At the third station, Maria faced her biggest challenge yet. Multiple targets appeared simultaneously at different ranges, requiring rapid engagement. With a functioning rifle, this would be difficult but manageable. With her broken weapon, it seemed impossible. She studied the target pattern for a full minute before making her move. Instead of trying to engage all targets as they appeared, she positioned herself to cover multiple lanes of fire. When the sequence began, she engaged the closest targets first, using her modified rifle like a precision instrument. Each shot was deliberate and calculated. She couldn't afford misses or wasted ammunition. The manual cycling of the bolt actually forced her to slow down and focus on accuracy rather than speed. Other candidates were finishing the course while Maria was still only halfway through. The time pressure was enormous, but she refused to rush her shots. Every round had to count. At the fourth station, disaster struck again. The firing pin modification she had made finally failed completely. The rifle was now completely inoperable. She had two choices: quit the exercise or find another way to continue. Looking around the course, Maria spotted something that gave her an idea. One of the earlier candidates had dropped a magazine during a reload. It was lying in the dirt about 20 meters away, probably containing live rounds. Moving quickly but carefully, Maria retrieved the dropped magazine. It contained 3 rounds of ammunition. She also noticed that another candidate had left behind a cleaning rod near the equipment station. What happened next would become the stuff of military legend, though few people would believe it when they heard the story later. Maria removed the bolt from her broken rifle completely, essentially creating a single-shot weapon that she could operate manually. Using the cleaning rod as a makeshift firing pin, she could still detonate the rounds, but she would have to reload manually after each shot. The improvised weapon system was dangerous and unconventional, but it worked. At the 5th target station, Maria successfully engaged 3 targets using her jury-rigged rifle and the recovered ammunition. By now, other candidates had finished the course and were gathering at the final checkpoint. Range safety officers were debating whether to stop Maria's run for safety reasons. The weapon she was using no longer resembled anything in the technical manuals. Commander Morrison found himself in an unexpected position. He had planned for Maria to fail quietly with the broken rifle. Instead, she had turned the malfunction into a demonstration of adaptability and determination that was impressive even by special operations standards. The final station required candidates to engage targets while moving through a narrow corridor. It was designed to test accuracy under stress while maintaining forward momentum. With a functioning weapon, it required precise shooting while advancing. With Maria's improvised system, it seemed nearly impossible. She approached the final challenge knowing that her performance here would determine everything. She had come too far to quit now, even though her makeshift weapon was barely holding together. The corridor was 20 meters long with targets appearing at random intervals on both sides. Candidates had to maintain a minimum pace while achieving a minimum hit percentage. The scoring system was unforgiving, and there was no room for error. Maria entered the corridor at a steady walk, her modified rifle ready. The first target appeared on her left side. She stopped, aimed carefully, and fired. The cleaning rod firing pin worked, and the target dropped. She manually reloaded and continued forward. The second target appeared on the right side, closer and more challenging. Again, she stopped, aimed, and fired. Another hit. But the manual reloading process was eating up precious time. By the time she reached the halfway point, Maria was well behind the required pace. She had hit every target she engaged, but she couldn't afford the time it took to reload between shots. That's when she made a decision that would define her military career. Instead of continuing with the time-consuming reloading process, she accelerated her pace through the corridor. She would complete the final half using speed and movement rather than firepower. The remaining targets popped up in rapid succession, but Maria was moving too fast to engage them all. She selected only the highest value targets, those positioned to represent the greatest threats. Her accuracy remained perfect, but she was deliberately leaving some targets unengaged. When she emerged from the corridor, the range fell silent. Everyone was calculating scores and trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Commander Morrison climbed down from the observation tower and walked across the range to where Maria stood, her improvised weapon still in her hands. The other candidates gathered around, curious about what would happen next. "Soldier," Morrison said, his voice carrying across the quiet range, "in 20 years of running these assessments, I have never seen anything like what just happened." Maria stood at attention, unsure whether she was about to be praised or disciplined for her unconventional approach. "You were given defective equipment," Morrison continued, "and instead of using it as an excuse to quit, you found a way to complete the mission. That kind of adaptability is exactly what we need in special operations." The other candidates exchanged glances. It was becoming clear that Maria had not only passed the assessment, but had done something remarkable in the process. Morrison examined the remains of Maria's rifle, noting the missing bolt and the improvised firing mechanism. "This should have been impossible," he said quietly. "No one should be able to complete this course with equipment in this condition." What Morrison didn't say out loud was that the broken rifle had been intentional. It was supposed to be Maria's quiet elimination from the program. Instead, it had become the moment that proved she belonged in special operations more than any of the other candidates. As the group moved toward the debriefing area, word of Maria's performance began spreading through the training facility. Instructors who had been skeptical about female candidates were asking to see the video footage. Range safety officers were trying to understand how she had modified the rifle without violating safety protocols. The story was already becoming legend, but the real test was still to come. Completing the weapons assessment was only the first step. The final phase of selection would push every candidate to their absolute limits, and Maria would face challenges that made the broken rifle seem simple by comparison. But as she cleaned the dirt from her gear and prepared for the next phase, Maria felt something she had never experienced before in the military. For the first time, she wasn't fighting to prove she belonged. She was fighting because she knew she did. Commander Morrison watched her from across the staging area, his own assumptions and prejudices crumbling. He had spent 3 decades in special operations, and he thought he understood what made a good operator. Maria Santos was forcing him to reconsider everything he believed about leadership, adaptability, and what it really meant to overcome impossible odds. The broken rifle had been meant to end her dreams quietly. Instead, it had become the moment that launched a career that would change special operations forever. But that transformation was still to come, and the hardest tests were still waiting. The debriefing room was thick with tension as the assessment scores were calculated. Maria sat among the remaining candidates, her modified rifle now secured as evidence of what the instructors were calling the most innovative equipment adaptation in selection history. But she knew her real test was just beginning. Commander Morrison entered the room with a folder of results and an expression that revealed nothing. He had spent the last hour on secure phone calls with his superiors, trying to explain how a female candidate had not only survived the sabotaged equipment, but had turned it into a demonstration of tactical brilliance. "The weapons assessment is complete," Morrison announced. 3 candidates have been eliminated for failing to meet minimum standards. The remaining 7 will proceed to the final phase of selection. Maria felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. She could see the resentment in the eyes of some candidates who had been eliminated. They knew their equipment had functioned properly, while she had somehow succeeded with a broken rifle. The whispers had already started. The final phase will test your ability to lead under extreme pressure, Morrison continued. Each remaining candidate will command a squad of regular Army soldiers in a 72-hour field exercise. You will be evaluated on tactical decision-making, team leadership, and mission accomplishment under stress. This was the part of selection that Maria had dreaded most. The physical challenges and weapon skills were measurable and objective. Leadership evaluation was subjective, and she knew that bias could easily influence the results. Santos, Morrison called out, you'll be commanding 3rd Squad. Your mission brief is classified until the exercise begins. Report to the staging area at 0500 tomorrow. As the other candidates received their assignments, Maria noticed something troubling. She was being given 3rd Squad, which was notorious among the instructor staff as the most difficult unit to command. These were soldiers who had volunteered to participate in selection exercises specifically to challenge potential special operations candidates. Sergeant First Class Tommy Rodriguez, 3rd Squad's senior non-commissioned officer, had made it his personal mission to break candidates who tried to command his men. He was a 20-year veteran with combat experience in 3 wars, and he had never served under a female officer. The skepticism in his eyes was unmistakable when Maria introduced herself. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, his tone carefully neutral, "the squad is ready for your inspection." The 8 soldiers of 3rd Squad stood in formation, their equipment immaculate, but their attitudes clearly skeptical. Maria could read their body language like a tactical map. They respected her for surviving the weapons assessment, but they didn't believe she could lead them in combat. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Maria said, "I'd like to review the squad's capabilities and discuss our approach to leadership during the exercise." "With respect, ma'am, we've been doing this for a while. We know how to follow orders and complete missions. Your job is to give us good orders." It was a polite way of saying that the squad would evaluate her leadership rather than simply accept it. Maria understood the challenge immediately. These weren't fresh recruits who would follow orders without question. They were experienced soldiers who would test every decision she made. That evening, Maria studied the personnel files of her squad members. Each soldier had unique strengths and experiences that could be valuable in the right situation. Rodriguez was an expert in urban combat. Corporal James Wilson was a communications specialist with language skills. Private First Class Sarah Kim was a medic with engineering training. But the files also revealed potential problems. 2 of the soldiers had personality conflicts that had caused issues in previous exercises. Another had a reputation for questioning orders when he disagreed with tactical decisions. Leading this group would require more than technical knowledge. It would demand psychological insight and careful relationship management. The exercise began before dawn with the delivery of sealed mission orders. Maria opened the envelope and read the scenario that would determine her fate in special operations. Her squad was tasked with infiltrating an enemy-controlled village, gathering intelligence on weapon caches, and exfiltrating without detection within 48 hours. The mission was complicated by several factors designed to test leadership under pressure. The squad would operate with limited communications, minimal resupply, and under constant surveillance by opposing forces. Any mistake could result in capture and mission failure. "Listen up," Maria addressed her squad as they prepared their equipment. "This mission requires perfect coordination and absolute trust. I know some of you have questions about my experience and abilities. Fair enough. Let me earn your confidence through my actions, not my words." Rodriguez nodded slightly. It was exactly the right thing to say, and he was impressed despite himself. The infiltration began at midnight with a 5-kilometer approach, marched through dense forest. Maria had studied the terrain extensively and chosen a route that avoided known patrol areas while providing multiple fallback positions. Her planning was methodical and thorough, impressing the squad members who had expected less tactical sophistication. 2 hours into the movement, they encountered their first challenge. The planned river crossing point was occupied by an enemy patrol that hadn't been in the intelligence briefing. Maria had to make an immediate decision: find an alternative crossing or wait for the patrol to move. "Wilson," she whispered into her radio, "can you determine the patrol pattern?" Roger, ma'am. They're on a 20-minute rotation, but there's a gap in their observation zone about 300 meters upstream. Maria quickly analyzed the alternatives. The upstream crossing would add an hour to their timeline, but would maintain mission security. The original crossing point was faster but risked detection. Under pressure to maintain the schedule, many candidates would have chosen speed over security. We move upstream, Maria decided. Security is more important than schedule. It was the right call, but it put immediate pressure on the timeline. The squad would have to move faster during subsequent phases to make up the lost time. At the alternative crossing point, they discovered another problem. The river was deeper and faster than expected, making a silent crossing difficult with their equipment. Several squad members looked to Maria for guidance, testing whether she would stick with her decision or change course again. Kim, Maria called softly. You have rope in your pack? Yes, ma'am. 50 feet of paracord. Set up a static line crossing. Rodriguez, establish security on both sides. Wilson, monitor communications for any sign we've been detected. The crossing took 40 minutes, but it was executed perfectly. By the time they reached the far side, the squad members were beginning to see Maria differently. Her decisions were careful and well-reasoned, prioritizing mission success over personal convenience. As they approached the target village, Maria gathered her squad for a final briefing. Intelligence indicated the weapon caches were located in 3 buildings spread throughout the settlement. Each cache required verification and documentation before the squad could exfiltrate. We'll split into 3 teams, Maria explained, sketching a rough map in the dirt. Rodriguez and Williams take the northern building. Kim and Thompson cover the southern cache. I'll take Jenkins and Wilson to the central location. We coordinate movements by radio and extract together. Ma'am, Rodriguez interjected, splitting the squad increases risk. If one team encounters trouble, we won't be able to provide immediate support. It was a valid tactical concern, but Maria had considered the alternatives. Sergeant, a single squad moving through the village increases the chance of detection. 3 smaller teams can move faster and attract less attention. We maintain radio contact and have contingency plans for each scenario. Rodriguez studied her plan more carefully. It was actually more sophisticated than most candidates attempted. She had identified rally points, established communication protocols, and planned escape routes for each team. The split squad approach was risky, but it was also tactically sound. The village infiltration began at 0300 hours. Maria's team moved through the shadows toward their assigned building, using hand signals to coordinate their approach. The structure appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, but intelligence suggested it contained a significant weapons cache. As they approached the building, Maria noticed something that hadn't been in the briefing materials. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt indicated recent vehicle activity. The weapons cache might not be abandoned after all. Wilson, she whispered, scan for electronic signatures. This place might be occupied. Wilson activated his detection equipment and immediately picked up radio signals from inside the building. Ma'am, I'm reading active communications equipment. This site is definitely occupied. Maria faced another critical decision. The mission required documentation of all weapon caches, but entering an occupied building significantly increased the risk of detection and engagement. A direct assault would compromise the entire exercise, but avoiding the building would mean incomplete intelligence. Change of plan, she decided. We establish overwatch and gather intelligence through observation. If we can't safely enter, we document what we can see and report the occupation status. It was a mature tactical decision that prioritized mission completion over personal heroics. Maria positioned her team to observe the building while maintaining communication with the other squads. Over the next hour, they documented vehicle movements, personnel patterns, and equipment signatures that provided valuable intelligence even without interior access. Maria realized that sometimes the most important leadership decision was knowing when not to take unnecessary risks. The other squads reported similar challenges at their assigned locations. Rodriguez's team discovered their cache had been moved, while Kim's team found evidence of recent reorganization that suggested the intelligence was outdated. Instead of treating these discoveries as failures, Maria saw them as valuable information. The exercise was testing their ability to adapt to changing conditions and make intelligent decisions under pressure. All teams, this is Santos, she broadcast. We have enough intelligence to confirm that enemy activity is significantly higher than briefed. Recommend we consolidate our findings and begin exfiltration procedures. Roger that, ma'am, Rodriguez responded. The situation here has changed significantly. Your call. The acknowledgement from Rodriguez carried special weight. He was indicating that he trusted Maria's tactical judgment and would follow her decisions without question. For a veteran sergeant to show that level of confidence in a candidate was unusual and significant. The exfiltration required even more careful planning than the infiltration. The squad had to move through increasingly active enemy territory while carrying sensitive intelligence. Maria chose a route that avoided the most obvious escape paths while providing multiple options if they encountered opposition. Halfway through the exfiltration, they received word that another candidate's squad had been captured by the opposing force. The exercise controllers were applying increasing pressure to test decision-making under stress. Ma'am, Wilson reported, I'm picking up increased radio chatter. They're definitely looking for us. Maria gathered her squad leaders for a quick planning session. They could continue with the original exfiltration route and risk detection, or they could find a hiding spot and wait for the search activity to decrease. What's your assessment, Sergeant Rodriguez? Maria asked, showing respect for his experience while maintaining her command authority. The search pattern suggests they're focusing on the main escape routes. If we can find concealment and wait it out, they might move the search elsewhere. Maria agreed. Find us a hide site. We'll wait until the activity decreases before continuing. They spent the next 6 hours hidden in a drainage culvert while enemy patrols searched the area around them. During this time, Maria had the opportunity to really talk with her squad members and understand their perspectives on leadership and teamwork. The conversations revealed something important. These soldiers didn't care about her gender or background. They cared about her competence, her decision-making ability, and whether she would put their safety ahead of her personal ambitions. The broken rifle incident had actually helped establish her credibility because it demonstrated her ability to adapt and overcome obstacles. When the search activity finally decreased, Maria led her squad through the final phase of the exfiltration. They reached the extraction point with 20 minutes to spare, having successfully gathered intelligence and avoided detection throughout the exercise. As they waited for the exercise to officially end, Rodriguez approached Maria privately. Ma'am, I've participated in a lot of these exercises, he said. Most candidates try to prove themselves by taking unnecessary risks or making dramatic gestures. You focused on mission accomplishment and team safety. That's real leadership. Commander Morrison was waiting at the debriefing area with a team of evaluators who had monitored the entire exercise. The evaluation process was thorough and included input from the squad members themselves. Santos, Morrison said, your squad accomplished the mission objectives while adapting to changing conditions and maintaining operational security. Your leadership style earned the respect of experienced soldiers who are typically skeptical of new officers. Maria felt a surge of pride, but she remained focused on the feedback and lessons learned from the exercise. However, Morrison continued, the real test of your leadership abilities is still ahead. Special operations missions involve life and death decisions with no opportunity for do-overs. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? It was a question that every candidate faced, but Maria knew that her answer would carry additional weight because of the scrutiny she faced as the first female candidate. Sir, I've been preparing for this responsibility my entire career. The broken rifle taught me that equipment can fail, but leadership and adaptability are the tools that really matter in critical situations. Morrison nodded slowly. The reference to the broken rifle was perfect. It connected her technical skills, problem-solving ability, and leadership potential in a single example that everyone could understand and respect. The final evaluation results would be announced the following morning, but Maria felt confident that she had demonstrated her capabilities under realistic pressure. Win or lose, she had proven to herself and others that she belonged in special operations. As she cleaned her equipment and prepared for the final phase of selection, Maria reflected on how much had changed since the weapons assessment. The broken rifle that was supposed to eliminate her had instead become the foundation of her reputation for innovation and determination. But Commander Morrison had one more test in mind, one that would challenge not just her technical skills and leadership ability, but her capacity to handle the ultimate pressure that came with Special Operations Command. Dawn broke gray and cold over the training facility as Maria prepared for what she believed would be the final evaluation briefing. She had completed every phase of selection successfully, earned the respect of veteran soldiers, and demonstrated leadership under extreme pressure. But Commander Morrison had one final test that would challenge everything she thought she understood about special operations. Santos. Report to Conference Room Alpha immediately, came the announcement over the facility's communication system. The formal tone suggested something significant was about to happen. Maria entered the conference room to find not just Commander Morrison, but General Patricia Hayes, the highest-ranking female officer in Special Operations Command, along with two colonels she didn't recognize. The presence of such senior leadership indicated that her selection results were being scrutinized at the highest levels. Candidate Santos, General Hayes began, your performance during selection has been exceptional. You've demonstrated technical proficiency, tactical innovation, and leadership capability that exceeds our standards for special operations personnel. Maria remained at attention, uncertain where this conversation was leading. Praise from general officers was rarely followed by simple congratulations. However, Morrison interjected, there are concerns about how your integration into operational units would affect team dynamics and mission effectiveness. Some question whether the modifications you would require are worth the potential benefits you might provide. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. After everything she had accomplished, after proving herself repeatedly under impossible conditions, there were still doubts about her place in special operations. General Hayes studied Maria's reaction carefully. What Commander Morrison is saying is that your success has created a political situation that extends beyond your individual qualifications. There are people who want you to fail because you represent change they're not ready to accept. Ma'am, Maria responded carefully, I understand that my presence changes the traditional dynamic, but I believe my performance has demonstrated that capability matters more than demographics. That's exactly the attitude we need, Hayes said with a slight smile. Which is why we have a proposal for you. Morrison leaned forward in his chair. Santos, how would you feel about commanding me? The question was so unexpected that Maria thought she had misunderstood. Sir, you heard correctly, Morrison continued. We want to know if you can lead a team that includes senior officers who initially doubted your abilities. Can you command the respect and obedience of people who outrank you in the traditional hierarchy? General Hayes explained the scenario. This is an experimental exercise designed to test leadership dynamics in special circumstances. Commander Morrison will serve as your second-in-command for a high-stakes mission simulation. Your job is to lead the mission while managing a team member who has been openly skeptical of your capabilities. Maria realized this was more than just another test. This was a real-world preview of challenges she would face throughout her special operations career. If she could successfully lead Morrison, she could lead anyone. I accept the challenge, ma'am. The mission scenario was unlike anything attempted before in selection. Maria would command a 4-person team tasked with infiltrating a simulated terrorist facility and neutralizing a high-value target. The catch was that her team would include Morrison, a colonel who had initially supported the broken rifle sabotage, and a master sergeant who had publicly stated that women had no place in special operations. Your mission begins in 6 hours, Morrison explained. You'll have access to full mission planning resources, complete intelligence packages, and unlimited equipment requests. The only limitation is that you must work with the team members you've been assigned. As the senior officers left the conference room, Morrison remained behind. For the first time since Maria had met him, his formal military demeanor relaxed slightly. Santos, I owe you an explanation about the broken rifle, he said quietly. It was my decision to sabotage your equipment. I believed that special operations wasn't ready for female personnel, and I thought a quiet equipment failure would end your candidacy without creating controversy. Maria had suspected as much, but hearing the confirmation still stung. Sir, why are you telling me this now? Because you turned my sabotage into the most impressive demonstration of adaptability and problem-solving I've ever witnessed. You forced me to confront my own prejudices and reconsider what really matters in special operations. Morrison stood and moved toward the door. In 6 hours, I'll be following your orders. I want you to know that my respect for your abilities is genuine, even though my initial assessment was wrong. Left alone in the conference room, Maria began planning the most important mission of her career. She had to design an operation that would succeed while managing team dynamics that could easily determine everything she was trying to accomplish. The intelligence briefing revealed a complex scenario. The target facility was a 3-story building with multiple entry points, sophisticated security systems, and an unknown number of defenders. The high-value target would be located somewhere in the building, but his exact position would change throughout the mission. Maria spent 4 hours developing a plan that would utilize each team member's strengths while minimizing opportunities for internal conflict. She assigned Morrison to handle tactical coordination, knowing that his experience would be valuable and that giving him significant responsibility would demonstrate her confidence in his abilities. When the team assembled for the final briefing, the tension was immediately apparent. Colonel Barnes, who had opposed her candidacy from the beginning, made no effort to hide his skepticism. Master Sergeant Williams was professional but clearly uncomfortable with the command structure. "Gentlemen," Maria began, "I know this is an unusual situation for all of us. Our success depends on putting aside personal opinions and focusing on mission accomplishment. I'm going to treat each of you as the professional soldiers I know you are, and I expect the same level of professionalism in return." She outlined her tactical plan in detail, explaining the reasoning behind each decision and asking for input from team members based on their expertise. Instead of demanding blind obedience, she demonstrated that she valued their experience and judgment. "Commander Morrison, you'll coordinate our approach and handle any tactical modifications that become necessary. Colonel Barnes, your job is overwatch and communications. Master Sergeant Williams, you're responsible for breach operations and target identification." The plan was solid and made effective use of everyone's capabilities. Even Colonel Barnes had to admit that the tactical concepts were sound and well-reasoned. The mission simulation began at midnight with an insertion by helicopter into hostile territory. Maria's team had to approach the target building while avoiding simulated enemy patrols and surveillance systems. During the approach phase, Maria faced her first leadership challenge. Morrison identified a potential problem with the planned route and recommended a significant modification to the plan. "Santos, the intelligence was wrong about patrol patterns. If we continue on this route, we'll walk into a simulated enemy position." In a traditional military hierarchy, a commander might reject input from subordinates to maintain authority. But Maria had learned that effective leadership meant adapting to new information, regardless of its source. "Show me what you're seeing, Commander," she said, studying Morrison's tactical assessment. His analysis was correct. The patrol patterns had changed since the intelligence briefing, creating a significant risk of detection if they continued with the original plan. "We modify the approach," Maria decided quickly. "Commander Morrison, guide us through the alternative route. Everyone else maintain formation and follow his lead." It was exactly the right decision, but it also demonstrated something important to the team. Maria was confident enough in her leadership to accept good advice and modify plans when circumstances changed. Colonel Barnes, who had been looking for signs of inexperience or inflexibility, found himself impressed by her tactical adaptability. As they reached the target building, Maria faced another test of her leadership skills. The building's security was more sophisticated than expected, requiring a breach method that wasn't in the original plan. "Williams," she called softly, "can you get us through the perimeter without triggering the alarm system?" Master Sergeant Williams studied the security setup carefully. "I can disable the sensors, but it will require a different entry point than we planned. Are you willing to change the entire approach based on my assessment?" It was a direct challenge to her command authority. Williams was essentially asking whether she trusted his professional judgment enough to modify the mission plan in real time. "Master Sergeant, you're the breach specialist. If you say we need a different approach, then that's what we'll do. What do you recommend?" Williams outlined an alternative entry method that would avoid the electronic security systems but would require precise timing and coordination. It was more complex than the original plan, but it offered a better chance of mission success. Execute your plan, Maria ordered. Commander Morrison, coordinate our movements based on Master Sergeant Williams' timeline. The breach operation was flawless. Williams disabled the security systems and opened an entry point exactly when planned. The team moved into the building with perfect coordination, demonstrating the kind of seamless teamwork that special operations demanded. Inside the building, they faced their most challenging obstacle yet. The high-value target was located on the third floor, but intelligence indicated that reaching him would require passing through multiple rooms filled with simulated enemies. "We need a diversion," Maria announced after studying the building layout. "Something to draw attention away from our actual approach." Colonel Barnes, who had remained skeptical throughout the mission, spoke up for the first time. "Santos, I have an idea that might work, but it requires trusting my judgment on something that isn't in any manual." Maria looked at him directly. "Colonel, I'm listening." Barnes outlined a psychological warfare approach that would use noise and movement to create the illusion of a larger attacking force approaching from the wrong direction. It was innovative and risky, but it could provide the diversion they needed. "Do it," Maria decided immediately. "Commander Morrison, coordinate with Colonel Barnes to execute the diversion. Williams and I will use the distraction to reach the target." The diversion worked perfectly. While simulated enemies focused on the phantom attack from one direction, Maria and Williams approached the target from another angle entirely. When they reached the high-value target's location, Maria faced the final challenge of the exercise. The target was heavily defended, requiring a precision operation that left no room for error. "Williams, can you take the shot from this position?" "Negative. I need a different angle, but getting there exposes me to defensive fire." Maria studied the tactical situation carefully. She could order Williams to take the risky shot, potentially sacrificing him for mission success, or she could find an alternative approach. "I'll provide covering fire while you move to a better position," she decided. "Take your time and make the shot count." It was the kind of leadership decision that prioritized team member safety while still accomplishing the mission. Williams moved to his optimal position and successfully eliminated the target without casualties. As the exercise concluded, Maria's team had achieved complete mission success while demonstrating flawless coordination and mutual respect. More importantly, she had earned the genuine trust and admiration of 3 senior military leaders who had initially opposed her candidacy. During the post-mission debriefing, the transformation in team dynamics was obvious to everyone observing the exercise. "Santos," Colonel Barnes said, "I owe you an apology. I opposed your candidacy because I thought special operations required a different kind of leadership than what women could provide. You've proven that leadership has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with competence and character." Master Sergeant Williams nodded in agreement. "Ma'am, you earned my respect by trusting my expertise and putting mission success ahead of your ego. That's the kind of leadership that saves lives in combat." Commander Morrison remained silent during the initial feedback, but when General Hayes asked for his assessment, his response was unequivocal. "General, candidate Santos demonstrated leadership abilities that exceed those of most officers I've served with during my career. She adapted to changing conditions, utilized team member strengths effectively, and made decisions that prioritized mission success and team safety." He paused and looked directly at Maria. More importantly, she overcame deliberate sabotage and personal prejudice with professionalism and competence. If that's not special operations material, then I don't understand what we're looking for. General Hayes smiled as she opened the folder containing Maria's final evaluation results. "Candidate Santos, it gives me great pleasure to inform you that you have successfully completed Special Operations Selection. You will be commissioned as a Special Operations Officer with assignment to the unit of your choice." The room erupted in applause from the evaluation team and support staff who had monitored her progress throughout the selection process. But General Hayes had one final surprise. "There's something else, Lieutenant Santos. Based on your performance during selection, and specifically your leadership during the final exercise, you're being assigned as the executive officer of the unit's new training development program. Your job will be to design and implement selection procedures that evaluate candidates based on capability rather than demographics." Maria realized that her success had opened doors not just for herself, but for future candidates who would benefit from fair and unbiased evaluation processes. Ma'am, I'm honored to accept the assignment. Commander Morrison approached her as the debriefing concluded. Santos, I have one final confession. The broken rifle wasn't just sabotage. It was a test to see if you could overcome impossible odds while maintaining your professionalism and determination. You passed that test in ways I never imagined possible. You didn't just adapt to the broken equipment. You turned it into a demonstration of innovation and resilience that changed how everyone thinks about problem-solving under pressure. As Maria left the conference room, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The broken rifle that was supposed to end her dreams had instead become the foundation of a career that would change special operations forever. She had proven that capability mattered more than tradition, that innovation could overcome sabotage, and that true leadership was about earning respect through actions rather than demanding it through rank. But most importantly, she had learned that overcoming obstacles wasn't just about personal success. It was about opening doors for others and creating opportunities for future generations to succeed based on their abilities rather than their demographics. The broken rifle had been intended as her end. Instead, it became her beginning. And everyone who had underestimated Maria Santos now understood that sometimes the greatest victories come not from perfect equipment, but from imperfect circumstances that reveal the true character of exceptional leaders. Years later, when special operations units across the military had been successfully integrated, when female officers commanded some of the most elite units in the armed forces, military historians would trace the transformation back to a single moment on a training range where a young candidate was handed defective equipment and chose to adapt rather than quit. The broken rifle had become a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the power of determination to overcome any obstacle. And Maria Santos had become living proof that leadership has nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with what you can accomplish when everything seems impossible.